Alright, what's good YouTube? Gentlemen, Thomas here back on our video channel, and today we have our SDL Season 12. Yes, Season 12 draft analysis. This is a league that existed for quite a while. I've known of it, but I've just never participated because my schedule hasn't aligned up for when it was released and whatnot, so I just haven't been able to participate. It is actually co-ran by two people I know. As far as I know, it's those two people that run it, or at least commission it. Called Fate and Insanity Fang, and I actually have quite I know history is maybe a little bit weird to say, but with Fate, we've known each other for quite a while because I do believe we were both part of the OG people on WPF. So that is very cool that I get to basically play with him a little bit again, even though we're not in the same divisions. But let's not talk about that. So we are in what's called the Quagsire division. This league is divided by Mega Quagsire, and Wooper. So we are in the middle division. It's a very standard national dex draft. We draft 10 to 11 Pokemon with 110 points. There's a little bit of a tight budget compared to some other leagues, but that also kind of makes it interesting because you have to be a little bit creative with what you pick. Like you can still pick really good mons, you know, but it's not like 115, 120 as a lot of other leagues have adapted. There are no S tiers in this league, so no like Naganadel, no Darkrai, stuff like that. And we got the 13th pick overall, so not the greatest. 13 is kind of where you start really feeling not being part of the wheel. Like if you get 14, 15, and especially 16, that's fine because you're wheel, so you get 2 picks immediately, which is actually I prefer that a lot of the times. But 13 pick is definitely where you can kind of feel it's not as good as anymore. So we have to wait for 12 picks to be made, and let me just tell you, yeah, I'm absolutely gonna call out my entire division. I wasn't like the greatest myself, but I definitely wasn't the worst. We took a long time to draft. This was maybe the longest draft I've ever been in. Holy, it took a long time. So yeah, we had to wait for 12 other people to pick, and we ended up picking up something I was actually very interested in picking up because it was allowed something in this league that it typically isn't allowed, even though this is an S-tier league. And that was Deoxys Speed. It's going to be named Saturn. The entire concept of the nicknames are going to be based on like Roman gods, so it's going to be like Saturn and stuff like that. This is allowed Nasty Plot in this league. As you can see here, we got it for 18 points. It wasn't the expensive tier. The expensive tier was 19 or 20. I actually can't remember right now. But yeah, we got it for 18 points with Nasty Plot. No Psycho Boost, but we can still Nasty Plot, Psychic, Nasty Plot, like Ice Beam, stuff like that. Other than that, Deoxys Speed is a really good utility mon. It gets access to Spikes, Stealth Rock, Recover. You can knock off with it, you can taunt with it. It can do a lot of things. So you can both put it in a support, defensive, or offensive role. So it's a really good versatile mon to have to begin with. It lacks a little bit in the offensive presence because 95 special attack isn't all that nowadays. But as I mentioned, access to Nasty Plot makes it a lot better offensively, which is why I wanted it, because typically it either doesn't have Nasty Plot or it has Nasty Plot, but all the other like really good mons are like S tier mons. So this is a really good opportunity to actually try it out, I feel like. Now, to pair with the Deoxys, you typically want a mon that's really good at bullying dark types, because even though it does get access to like Focus Blast, I believe, and maybe Aura Sphere, dark types is still the thing that makes it so you can spam psychic moves. So getting a really strong fighting type early on is very important. And I ended up going with Jupiter, the Galarian Zapdos. I have been wanting to retry this ever since I tried it in WPF a couple of seasons ago. This is a very fun mon, really good choice scarf mon, really good choice band mon in some situations. Can be set up with bulk up. Access to, of course, close combat and Brave Bird for the 2 big stabs, but even then you have Thunderous Kick and Dual Wing Beat if you don't want to take the recoil. And Thunderous Kick, of course, lowers the opponent's defense, and Dual Wing Beat hits 2 times, which sometimes is really good and sometimes is really bad, depending on the matchup. So that's something you also have to think about when using this mon. As I mentioned, insanely good choice scarf mon, like just U-turning in and out, pivoting. The dual stab is amazing. It's very hard to swap into. And this bullies a lot of mon that Deoxys have a hard time dealing with. There is one type though that this doesn't hit as well, and Deoxys isn't the greatest against, and that's like flying types. You want a mon that can take a flying type hit and also hit back, and I end up picking up Melmetal. So Melmetal is really good against a lot of flying types, except for, of course, the electric flying and Zapdos and the steel flying in like Corona and Skarmory. But the Corona and Skarmory, Galarian Zapdos is at least neutral with fighting moves, and Melmetal, while it's not super effective with the steel typing and double Iron Bash, it can take pretty much any flying hit it needs to. Of course, a Hurricane from a special Tornadoes or something like that, it's gonna hurt, but we can run AV, stuff like that. This is also going to be my first time using Melmel. I've never used it. By the way, it's Mercury, if you couldn't read, you know. It's Mercury, the Melmel, and I'm pretty excited. I really wanted to try it out right when Melmel came out. Then there was a long period where I just didn't care because I really wanted my steel type to be able to set rocks, but I've come more around to it not being a thing lately just because there's a lot of steel types that doesn't get stealth rock that I actually have been wanting to try. Melmel being one of them. So this is going to be very interesting. It's of course a very hard hitter, 143 attack, I believe it is. Same with defense, access to double Iron Bash, which is like a insane move. If Melmel was any faster than this, I'm pretty sure double Iron Bash would be banned on it pretty much. So yeah, that is how good double Iron Bash is. But yeah, this can also be really good like substitute set. Can be really good body press mon because it does get access to both iron defense and body press. So yeah, you can do a lot of things with Melmel, though all of them kinda coincides with it being somewhat bulky offense to some extent. And I don't mind that because the first 3 mons we have I think are different and versatile enough that they kind of meld together pretty well. Now, as I mentioned, even though Deoxys does get access to hazards, we do want other hazards. And I ended up picking a really good mon that I haven't used for a while. It also happens to be a dark type that can help bullying down those psychic types that the Zapdos and Deoxys don't always want to deal with, and that is Crocodile. So we have Mars, the Crocodile, which is Mars is apparently the god of war. I don't know why it's called Mars. I feel like Mars is not the most war type name, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, Crocodile, really good dark type, really good ground type. Give us the electric immunity for the Galarian Zapdos. Also helps bullying down the psychic types. You could argue maybe that's not the greatest because it means it has to fill 2 roles. It has to fill the psychic resist role for Zapdos and the electric immunity role. Well, immunity for both of them for the Galarian Zapdos. But overall, I feel like Croc really fit in with this team plus. Even though it shares the fighting weakness with Melmel, we have Deoxys and Galarian Zapdos that kind of makes up for that. So overall, I'm pretty happy about Croc. Again, it's also a really good choice. Scarpa has some really good abilities in Intimidate for the defensive purposes, and Moxie for offense, and Anchor Point when we face Urshifu and I want to style on them. I don't know, maybe, we'll see. Next up, I ended up picking up Cofagrigus. So I went into this draft being like, I 100% want Cofagrigus. This is going to be Pluto the Cofagrigus, which is the god of death. So I feel like that, like the god of the underworld and whatnot. So I feel like that fit very well with Cofagrigus. I really want to use it. I haven't used it in like, I think well over a year, maybe even closer to 2 years. So I just wanted to use it. It's really good. It's a ghost type. Ghost type is really good nowadays. Access to, of course, Iron Defense, Body Press, but also just a Will-O-Wisp Pex or Shadow Ball. It gives us T-Spikes. We have more hazard setting, which is pretty nice. We do lack a little bit of removal, but we'll touch upon that a little bit later. Overall, it's also really good defensive pairing with Melmel and Croc, specifically more so Melmel, just because Melmel is only weak to fire and firefighting and ground, and Cofagrigus is, of course, immune to fighting, and it can take on like a lot of fire and ground types as long as they don't have a super effective stab move. You can pretty much take it with Cofagrigus. So pretty happy about this pick, and as I said, I just really wanted to use Cofagrigus, so I ended up taking it a little bit early because it's just a good mon. Next up is probably the first pick where I unfortunately got panicked into picking it up. I wanted the regular variant of this mon more than I wanted this variant we're about to pick up, but I think I made it work somehow, and that is Mega Blastoise. Neptune, the Mega Blastoise. So I wanted a regular Blastoise originally because it gave us spin. It gave us a good bulky mon to pair with the Cofagrigus. It can run AV, it can run, like, of course, leftovers, resistance berry. It doesn't get recovery, which is like the one thing I dislike about Blastoise. But well, it gets Life Dew, but Life Dew is terrible. But overall, I do think Mega Blastoise provides us the exact same as a regular Blastoise, of course, but it can be more offensive, which to some extent might not be that bad, because right now our team is very physically offensive, with only Dio and Cofagrigus being special, and both of them have less than 100 special attack. So picking up Blastoise might be a blessing in disguise, because it gives a little bit more especially offensive pressure. Now, other than that, this is also going to be our like defensive bulky water, which you always kind of want on a team. It's a rapid spinner, so we can get rid of hazards without we can get rid of our opponent's hazards without losing our own hazards. Unfortunately, we cannot run like heavy duty boots, so if they have stacked a lot, Blastoise will take the damage, and that's just is what it is. I can't do much about it. Next up, I ended up picking up Druddigon, and yeah, I'm sorry you have to look at the shiny Druddigon, but I didn't have the regular Druddigon for some reason, so this is going to be Apollo, the Druddigon. I really like Druddigon. I think it's one of the better low tier dragons. Just you get free stealth rocks, Rough Skin is an amazing ability paired with Rocky Helmet, and you punish any physically offensive monsters that have moves that hits, like Mega Low Punish, stuff like that. Though I don't know, I can't remember if Mega Low Punish got drafted. I think it actually did, yeah. Also, it gives access to like glare, so we can pair a lot of things. You have Dragon Tails or Roar to get it to phase things out. It can also be like a really good offensive monster. 120 attack is nothing to scoff at, and it gets access to Sheer Force. So any secondary effects gets negated, but then you get a boost. I think it's a 30% boost, so that's really, really good. And lastly, it has Mold Breaker, which Mold Breaker in certain scenarios can be pretty good, but overall we're probably going to run Rough Skin or maybe Sheer Force for the offensive variant. I'm pretty happy with Dragon. It's just a standard dragon. It doesn't do a whole lot, but what it does just does really well. And next up, I paired my Dragon type with my Fairy type, which is going to be Whimsicott. And now, before anyone starts slapping me in my face and say, what the hell are you doing? I know Whimsicott, it's not the greatest grass type, it's not the greatest fairy type. Look, typically you would want another fairy or another grass, so Whimsicott doesn't have to fit both roles, but unfortunately it does have to fit both roles on this team. I was starting to have to scrape a little bit for points. As I mentioned, picking up Mega Blastoise wasn't in the plans, and it is like a hell of a lot more expensive than regular Blastoise. I think it's like 3 or 4 points, which is a lot in this economy. It is. When you only have 110 points, that becomes a lot. So we picked up Whimsicott. It's a really good speed tier to have because it gives us a speed tier above Zapdos. Right now we have all the way from Dio down to Zapdos, which is not good. Now we have Whimsicott on 116. Prankster is an amazing ability. You can do a lot of things with it, like of course Lead Seed, and you have access to Stun Spore. You can Stun Spore monster faster, so you can like slow them down a little bit. You also get access to Prankster Defog, which is really, really good. So if we are in a matchup where I think our opponent is going to run like a million hazard sets, I can just put Defog on this with heavy duty boots. Even if it's at 1%, I can set it in and I can Prankster Defog and boom, we're good to go. Now, our main issue is Prankster Defog does target, so if our opponent sends in their Dark type, we can't Defog. But because we have Fairy type, we should be able to at least hit them pretty hard with a Moonblast, so that's pretty good. This also has access to knockoffs. It's another knockoff user. It's pretty good utility overall. It's not the greatest defensively, as I mentioned, but with Mega Blastoise, I'm not too worried about ground types. I do feel like we can deal with ground types to some extent. And part of why I'm saying that is because we also have this mon, Kanto Weezing. I am very, very used to drafting Galarian Weezing. I almost just said it there, but no. Kanto Weezing unfortunately does not get Defog. I wish this thing got Defog. If this thing got Defog, I feel like our hazard game would have been fine. But right now we only have Blastoise and Whimsicott, which I'm not the happiest about. It has to be what it is. But straying away from that, regular Weezing, amazing fighting check. It's really good for fighting types. It's really good for ground types because of Levitate. As long as they don't have Mold Breaker, I'm looking at you, Escadrille. It's fine. It's also just a generically really annoying mon for opponents to deal with because of Pain Split. It can access to Will-O-Wisp, so you can nerf fighting, not fighting types, physical type mons a lot. Also, a good poison type is always kind of important, I feel like. Plus, nowadays we can actually remove Levitate from this, so if our opponent starts, if I think our opponent's going to run like Toxic Spikes, I can just not run Levitate. I can run Neutralizing Gas, which by the way, Neutralizing Gas is an amazing ability as well, so I'm pretty happy about that. And we can just absorb the Toxic Spike. This is also a really good mon for Mega Mawile, actually. This is an amazing counter for Mega Mawile because if you run Neutralizing Gas, Mega Mawile loses its huge power. And you are resisting one of its stabs, and even though Iron Head is neutral, it is the weaker stab because Iron Head is base 80, Flare Rough is base 95, so it's pretty good. It does have access to Psychic Fangs, but you know, that's just something you have to deal with. But yeah, overall, I think Weezing is a really good pick for only 6 points. I think it just provides me with a little bit of physically defensive backbone, which our physical defense is pretty good, so overall, we don't need to improve that anymore. Next up, we picked up Jolteon, Venus the Jolteon. So I was a little bit stuck between Jolteon and Bolton. Jolteon was 4 points and Bolton's were 5 points. And because I picked up Jolteon, the meant I could pick up a little bit, slightly better normal type at the end, because we do pick up a normal type at the end. Jolteon is not great in Gen 8 without hidden power. It just isn't. I'm just gonna be honest. But being able to run like Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, it gets access to Shadow Ball, access to Hyper Voice. You can run like Toxic on it to Toxic some stuff. You can run Wish if you're really desperate. I don't think Wish Jolteon is the greatest, but you can. I've seen it ran before and it has been with success. So it's doable. Jolteon is a fine mon for 4 points. It's a good hard-hitting electric that can hit a lot of water types and flying types very hard, which are mons we kind of struggle with because our other water like breaker is a Whimsicott and our flying breakers are, oh wait, we have none other that can do stab wise. We have monsters that can hit them with like Mel, Crook, stuff like that, but we don't have the rock type. So Jolteon is just the best stab wise to hit flying types. And lastly, as I mentioned, our normal type, Diana, the type Null. This is the first time ever I picked up type Null. Actually, it's the same with Jolteon, but Jolteon, that's more so just because I don't think it's good in this gen, but I was forced to it. Type Null, I actually think type Null can be a really good solid mon. It is insanely bulky. Like I'm pretty sure it's more bulky than P2, but it just doesn't get the recovery, I believe, because it has a higher HP stat, but I think, and higher physical defense, but lower special defense, I think it is. Something like that. You do have to watch out for knockoff, but I don't think we're super weak to knockoff. Like Weezing is not that bad at getting knockoff. Same with Druddigon. Mega Blastoise, of course, doesn't care. Stuff like that. So overall, I'm not too worried about being knocked off with type Null. I don't know how type Null is gonna come, but in a matchup where we're facing like a really strong ghost type, I think this is very much worth coming. I named it Diana because Diana is the god of hunting, and this is gonna hunt down all those ultra beasts, you know, in the future. So I felt like the fit. And lastly, here we of course have our full team. So Deoxys Speed, Galarian Zapdos, Melmetal, Crocodile, Cofagrigus, Mega Blastoise, Druddigon, Whimsicott, Weezing, Jolteon, and type Null. I think the team started out insanely well. Like I think Dio, Gyarados, Melmetal, Croc, even maybe Cofagrigus was really good. You can argue Cofagrigus, maybe I shouldn't have picked that. Maybe I picked something else. The rest of the team is a little bit more iffy. It's good. I actually do think this team is good, but I definitely also think it could have been better. As I mentioned, the Blastoise kind of shot me a little bit in the foot because I had to spend more points on that water type, which meant I had to scrap some ideas I wanted and ended up picking up a couple of monsters that aren't the greatest, like Whimsicott and Jolteon and whatnot. But I think they'll work on this team very well because our team can put on a lot of pressure. So we might have to play a little bit of an offensive strategy throughout this league, like offensive Blastoise, offensive Melmetal, offensive Gyarados, stuff like that. But I think it's going to be fun. I think this team is going to be very fun to use because it has a good amount of pivots, good amount of knockoff. It can taunt a lot, stuff like that. So we can definitely win, I think, an offensive matchup. So that's probably what we're gonna go for. But yeah, as always, if you like the video, make sure to leave a like on the video, leave a comment down below what you thought of the team, or what you think of the team, and subscribe to the channel for future videos. With that, I'm out. Peace. YouTube.